Hello and welcome to the GodisaGeek Retrocast. Once again, I'm your host Lee Garbett, and joining me once again is co-host Robin Parker.
Hello, hello.
As you can see, we are going straight in with the title screen for the fantastic EA-published Mega Drive classic Road Rash.
Yeah, an early title for Electronic Arts, a console title, I should say, before it became known as the all-conquering, horrible corporation that it is nowadays.
Of course, it's quite a thinking how big EA are now, and back in the day, before they were on the console systems, they were mainly a PC and Commodore developer. Their name taken from the fact is they wanted to be considered as artists, so a lot of their early games would feature lots of arty packaging and art books and the like.
Yeah, they really sort of made their name in terms of console gaming on the Mega Drive with there's a whole slew of sports games and racing titles, which really sort of put them on the map.
Of course, the interesting story about how Electronic Arts became on the Mega Drive is it's quite dodgy, really. They actually found a way to reverse engineer the Mega Drive and learn how to make games for it. Back in those days, throughout the Mega Drive's lifespan, you had to actually be licensed to develop for the console. And as Electronic Arts had gone around that, they basically tried to have a word to Sega and say, if you don't give us a nice deal to let us make our own cartridges, we're just going to make games anyway. And Sega relented, and so we got some fantastic games, and that's why Mega Drive cartridges for EA are always weird with giant yellow tabs on as well.
Yeah, they're always different shape and size. Made them stand out, but it was a bit strange.
Yeah.
Very sort of blunt from EA there, anyway.
Yeah. So Road Rash, 1991, it was released. Relatively early in the Mega Drive's lifespan. I mean, I think, when did the Mega Drive come out in Europe? I think it was around 1991, so quite early.
Yeah, it was a fairly early game, definitely for the West, anyway.
It is, and it's a very violent racing game.
To say the least. I mean, it got progressively, I'd say, more extreme. The first one, it wasn't too much violence, but obviously, Road Rash, you're meant to race whilst fighting off your competitors, and you had a few few implements you could do that with, a few weapons, but later games added even more weapons, and I think put a bit more emphasis on the fighting side of things.
Certainly, I mean, your offensive capabilities in the original game are quite limited. You can punch and you can kick, and if you're very lucky, if you punch somebody that's got a police baton at the same time they're trying to hit you, you'll actually steal the baton.
Yeah, and then you can pummel them back.
Yeah, good.
And you had to try and avoid doing that in front of the police, though, on the game.
All while avoiding cars and avoid being beaten off your bike yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember times on the game where I got knocked off my bike and my bike skidded across the tarmac, and it'd take minutes. You'd have to run back to your bike and try and find it to carry on the race. And sometimes you'd go from first place down to last, just trying to find your bike again.
Certainly, that's me finishing the first race there, a first place finish. Got to be happy with that.
Yeah, the game soon sort of racked up the difficulty, and you sort of lulled into a false sense of security with a few easy races to begin with, and then the idea is as you go along, you build up your money and you can level up your bikes and improve your bikes. But as you do that, so do your opponents. So you have to try and keep up with them, otherwise they will leave you in their dust.
Of course, so it was always the trying to get the was it the Diablo bike was normally the most powerful one.
Yeah.
Trying to get the money to get that, because that was the ultimate bike, basically.
Yeah, you'd have to go trundle along and try and scrape a few good finishes to try and get enough money. You wouldn't be able to get any first places until you finally saved up enough to buy that good bike. Which
is easier said than done, because this game is quite hard, actually, when you think about it. I mean, as you can see, you don't really see that much far ahead on the road. It's very easy for an oncoming car to come your way, and you smash right into it, and of course you fall with your bike. Then of course you have the cops as well, which you can hear a little bit before you see them, but they're persistent, and unlike the other bikers, you can't actually knock them off their bikes, at least not in this game anyway.
No, it's definitely a tough title. As you say, you'll come up over a hill and suddenly get smashed to pieces by another car, and there's a lot to take. There's a lot to take into account. You've got to take those cars, take those racers, take in the scenery, which you can smash into the cows. There's a lot to try and avoid.
I forgot about the cows. I'm sure you could hit them, couldn't you? And it would make you fall off their bike.
Yeah, they were like a brick wall, these cows.
There's nothing worse than having the police chase you and panicking, smashing into a car, and then falling off your bike and basically getting busted, which will end your race.
Yeah, that could be a real pain, especially if you're doing well and just one false move and you're off your bike and the whole game's over. So it'd be a real pain. But then, as you were saying before, once you got that much vaunted Diablo, you could pull away from a lot of your rivals, and for some, you could spend large stretches. Oh, there you are, taking a tumble. I was going to say you could spend large stretches of the game not even seeing your opponents. You were pulling away from so much.
Certainly, see me running towards my bike. It's very slow running as well. That's the worst thing.
And then, a lot of the time you'd be running slowly towards your bike, and someone would come and knock you down again.
That's it. Or you just see other racers speed away right past you.
Yeah.
So, it's a very failure is dealt very harshly in this game, I find.
Yeah, you don't get punished once. Normally, you get punished a couple of times. You'll get hit, you're knocked off your bike. You'll get hit by someone else. You might smash into a tree as well whilst you're rolling along the floor. You didn't get it easy, definitely. Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure at one point, playing this game a few years back, I think I smashed into a car, and while kind of bouncing in the air, I hit another car, which propelled me even further. And then I think as I was trying to run back towards the camera to get to my bike, I got hit again.
Yeah, of course, because if you fly off your bike forwards, you've got no idea where it is. You can't see it. You've just got to run, hopefully, towards the screen, hoping you'll find your bike sooner or later. And as you say, it made for some tremendous crashes.
There's some of the bikes you can get your hands on as well there.
Oh, you're getting there. Not to the highest bike, but you could get a new one soon. But I remember a lot of the time you'd be saving up that money, working really hard to get the best bike, and you'd only get it just in time to race the last couple of races, and then the season was over.
As you've just seen, before the beginning of every race, they usually get a sound bite from one of your fellow racers, or even the cops themselves. Every now and then you'd have Biff pop up, and he's a douche, so you always want to punch him in the face.
Yeah, I definitely remember Rude Boy, who just flashed up on the screen there as well. You get all these different names, bring back memories, and I think even in the later titles, they were given a lot more character as well. Some of the late.
And even doing something as simple as giving them a name and occasionally flashing up their face, make them a bit more recognisable. And you'd always find that some particular racers would have particular weapons on them as well.
Yeah, there were ones, especially maybe not so much in the first game, but definitely in the second game. Different racers would have their signature weapons. So if you wanted one in particular and you saw their name flash up on your screen, you'd go after them to get their chain or to get their club, whatever is your weapon of choice.
I'd like to just take this moment to comment on how really great the music is in this. Composer Rob Hubbard is well known for composing for Electronic Arts. Did a lot of work on the Commodore 64 and a lot of work on the Mega Drive, and they really did get the feeling of motorbike racing in this. It's a very kind of rock or metally kind of soundtrack, and it's very difficult to get good music out of this Sega Mega Drive. Its FM synthesis made it quite difficult to get developers to get anything good out of it, but Rob Hubbard does it with ease every single time.
Yeah, I mean, it's unlike sort of another Sega game like Hang On, which was very sort of serious racing affair. For something like Road Rash, which has the edge of the fighting and the violence, having this sort of rocking soundtrack really complemented that, and that just made you sort of set the atmosphere a lot better. Certainly,
I mean, later CD-based Road Rash games would have licensed soundtracks, such as from the likes of Soundgarden and Therapy, but I always kind of like these tracks on here.
Yeah, you don't need these big band names. Just have a rip-off from classic rock. Yeah, that's enough for me.
just love those little synth sounds that the Mega Drive can be teased into making.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, unfortunately, there was a 2-player mode in Road Rash 1, but it was just it was taking turns, so you'd each get a chance. You and the second player would get a chance of doing the same race, one after the other, but it would never allow you to actually go head to head, which was a real shame, because by the time Road Rash 2 came along, you had the split screen, and both of you could take part in these big 20-man races, and you could both be trying to pummel each other as you race along.
So I've just taken the baton from somebody, so I'm just going to swing that around and see if I can hit anyone in the face with it.
Hopefully it's not a police officer yet.
Might be. Does look like a police officer in the distance.
Yeah.
Oh, but I finished the race, so it's all go.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the police, real bane, especially if you were just trying to get back to your bike. Sometimes they bust you just for being on foot, which was really annoying.
Yeah.
It's not a very unforgiving game, like you said before.
It really is. I mean, like, even with the better bikes, you still find yourself making a mistake which will cost you the entire race.
Yeah, and it's a shame this sort of Road Rash hasn't sort of endured quite as well as some other games. It hasn't managed to pick up its sort of yearly release, or its even generational release. We haven't had a Road Rash game for quite some time. There's been several sort of aborted attempts at restarting the series and bringing it onto newer consoles, but I don't think we've had a new one since the N64, in fact.
I think you're right, yeah, the Road Rash 64 was the last version, I believe, which was a rough port of the PlayStation 1 at the time, which I think was almost an updated version of the 3DO version as well.
Yeah, it was very similar. I mean, I know we've seen a few teasers over the years, which have suggested that EA have been working on a new game, but they've never come to light, unfortunately.
And I maintain that I think Road Rash should be brought back, because even as a smaller downloadable title, I think it would be a very interesting game, and I'd certainly like to see a developer like maybe Criterion try their hand at it. They've already proved that with Need for Speed they can really do good things with an existing franchise.
Oh, now you are busted.
Yes.
You get the fine as well. It's not bad enough that you have to restart the race. You have to do the race again, but you lose some of that hard-earned cash.
Yep, and of course it just makes it worse. You see the sneer in cops' faces as well, so
really rubs it in.
It really does.
And you got all these different track designs as well to spice things up a little bit, and they're all quite reminiscent of Outrun and other Sega racing games. Get the desert tracks, the countryside tracks, then the more urban tracks. It just sort of gives it a bit of variety.
Certainly.
But other than that, I suppose the courses are fairly monotonous, aren't they? I suppose.
Yeah, it's a usual kind of winding road. It's just the scenery's different. It's not really a set track to speak of.
Yeah, it's but then again, it was no racing games could really do much more at the time. It wasn't until you got stuff like Mario Kart coming along, where you had lots of jumps and hazards like fire and stuff, that you really got into the crazy territory. But for a semi-realistic racing game, you couldn't do much better than this at the time, really.
No, of course.
You even get little patches of oil and sand on the road which you can skid on if you're not careful.
Yeah, and they will make you crash very easily.
Yeah. And you get the jumps when you go over a big hill too, so there's a bit of variety.
Oh, I think I can hear the copper here.
It sort of became the bane of your life playing this game when you hear that sound, having to be really careful, and then you'd be paying too much attention to the policeman. You'd skid off the road, or you'd hit an obstacle.
Certainly.
And there was a sort of quasi-spiritual successor to Road Rash, which came out on, I believe, for PlayStation and Sega Saturn, ESPN Extreme Games, which offered skateboarding, BMXing, street luge, and rollerblading, and all four of them together in a very sort of street Road Rash style, where you could knock each other off, and you had to go through the different races, building up your money. It was actually a great title, which I don't think got much recognition at the time, but it's definitely one, if you enjoy Road Rash, it's definitely one I recommend you try out.
And of course, if you want to try something else on the Mega Drive, Road Rash did have a almost kind of follow-up by the name of Skitchin, which I believe had you kind of racing much like in this game, only you were on rollerblades and you could tag a ride onto the end of cars just to speed up as well. Very similar graphics engine. I think it was pretty much the same staff really that worked on Road Rash that made Skitchin.
It's very similar, and you even had the police, which they wouldn't like it when you held onto the back of a car for too long. But it was very similar in style, but was sort of trying to leech off the kind of urban culture of the early 90s with rollerblading and punk music, and maybe didn't catch on quite as much as Road Rash really.
And you just see me skid across the road. That's very painful.
Getting a proper Road Rash there.
It really is. I always like the running animation for getting back to your vehicle. It's almost comical.
Slightly ridiculous, yeah, in a good way.
I like the fact you can get your little rear view mirrors as well, which actually did work.
Yeah, I mean, you really need to pay attention to them sometimes, because trying to manage the policeman and then trying to sort of line up a good punch as someone tries to overtake you. But those rear view mirrors are a good little feature there, so it could be easily ignored.
Well, I think that's all we've got time for this episode of the GodisaGeek Retrocast. Thank you very much to my partner, Robin Parker. We'll of course see you every week, every Tuesday on GodisaGeek.com. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at the Retrocast. You can also check us out on YouTube, the iTunes, on the GodisaGeek TV feed, so you can check out all the other videos such as us ourselves, first looks, dirt sheet, all the other good stuff. So until next week, we shall catch you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.